1, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, or as my NIV says, faith is being sure of what you hope for and certain of what you haven't seen. Faith is confidence in the person of Jesus, in his power, even when his power or even with what he wills to happen at the moment doesn't serve my immediate needs. I still remain faithful to him because of who he is. And that's not always easy, is it, church? Mark and Gladys Bliss were missionaries in Iran. You got to go back a long time, but in the 1960s, they were going out of Tehran one night to visit some members a little distance out of the city. And on the way there, they had a car accident. And the car killed their 13-year-old daughter, 11-year-old Debbie, and 13-year-old Mark, their son, were killed. The one that was in the car with them lost a 6-year-old baby. I thought I'd throw this in, and this father, 25 years later, would be martyred for the cause of Christ. How do you tell a man who's had that kind of devastation, how do you tell him you're to be at peace? I read an account of another man, and I didn't realize there are people who keep lists, but there are people who keep lists of who's wealthy. And one of the 10 wealthiest people in the world wasn't happy. And he and his wife had every material possession you could think of. There was just nothing they needed. They gave everything away all the time. But he and his wife, as they talked with this man, they said, we're just empty. There's nothing inside us that gives meaning or purpose to life. And so they began their search for something to fill this empty void in their life. And they found their way to learn about Jesus, nothing dramatic, but no big crusade, no meeting, but an invitation to a weekly Bible study. Now, thinking about the couple who lost their children, and this person, is the faith of one of them any different than the other? I don't think the faith is any different, but I think the faith of one has been tested more than the other. To turn to God when all your earthly needs are met is huge. I remember as a kid reading this scripture, for it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God. For those who heard it said, then who can be saved? But Jesus said, with God, all things are, what is impossible with man is possible with God. And I always had this picture in my mind of somehow a camel trying to squeeze through a needle. When in reality, I'm pretty sure as I look back at the culture later, it was one of these sort of openings that the camel still had a hard time getting through. Jesus reminded his followers that the constant commitment, they would not always be consistent. Every generation will find a way to challenge God and his word. Our generation is no different. John 7, to what shall I compare this generation of this people of this generation? And what are they like? Well, they're like children, sitting in the marketplace, calling to one another. We played the flute and you didn't dance. We sang a dirge and you didn't weep. For John the Baptist came eating no bread and drinking no wine, and you said, he's got a demon. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and you say, look at him, he's a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners, yet wisdom is justified by her children. And John warned them of the penalty of breaking the law. They called him demon-possessed. They wanted more liberty. When Jesus was mingled with the outcasts, the sinners, etc., in the society, they wanted a law that was punishment. He was too open for them. a law that would punish him. That's what they wanted. They wanted neither the funeral music or the funeral saying or wedding saying. They wanted nothing because nothing pleased them. That's Jesus' point in the text. God's wisdom is justified in the changed lives of those who believe. It only takes at a glance at our American society to see that we are absolutely void of any wisdom. And I think it's because as a nation we neither understand law nor grace. Even religious people sometimes have a problem with grace. I want to point out a couple of things. I want to look at the mindset the thinking of one behind asking for a sign. Is the demand for a sign, is that not a sign in itself? After all, the reason a sign is demanded because we're intelligent beings. So they said, well, give us a sign. We want to take this all in and we want to weigh it and counterweigh it and see what it's like. The mere existence, I need to pause. The mere existence of a single cell on earth should be so astonishing to us that we spend every waking moment talking about it. A professor of mathematics at the University of Cardiff, Wales, writes about the human cell. He said the statistical probability of even forming an enzyme for the cell. A single enzyme is a building block of the gene. The gene is the building block of the cell. Stay with me. I'm not going to wade very far. Is 1 in 10 to the power of 264. Now, if that doesn't mean any to you, you can fill this room with zeros several thousand times, million times probably. It would require more attempts for the formation of one enzyme than there are atoms in all the stars and galaxies of the entire known universe. If you want to know more about this, let me know. I'll tell you where you can get on and watch the whole thing in detail. It was fascinating to me what God has allowed us to understand. But all of that, everything we have in the universe, it would take more than that to bring about a single cell. Though a Buddhist professor, the guy concedes, as he talks about this, that it's almost a supernatural concept. It's so impossible, is it, that Francis Crick, the Nobel Prize scientist who helped crack the code of the human DNA, said it's almost a miracle. Can't quite get over that hump, you know. We can't say it's a miracle, but it's getting pretty close. Who has to have more faith? Is it the Christian who uses his mind to trust God? Is it the one who, without any attempts explaining how his mind came to be, nevertheless, he uses his mind? He uses his mind to demand a sign, to disbelieve in God. Existence from non-existence. These are 5 things I want to share with you that the atheist must believe. The universe, matter, and energy arose from nothing without a creator. Second, life came from non-life. Starting with something like the amoeba and those things but living organisms spontaneously, they say, just originated from non-living matter. It just came out of nowhere. Order from chaos. Highly complex, orderly systems of the universe, such as the physical laws of DNA, developed from random, disorganized, chaotic processes. That's what they must believe. Number 4, consciousness and reason from non-reason. Personal consciousness and rational minds from impersonal, non-rational material processes. That's how it all came about. And finally, objective morality came from matter. Moral values and objective rights wrongs exist despite originating solely from physical material or an evolutionary process. All the good and bad, the right and wrong, well, it just came through a matter of process. Really? Left to our own devices, we would have already we've destroyed ourselves. Bertrand Russell was asked to explain the existence of the universe, and he said, it's just there. It's just there. What kind of an answer is that? It's just there. That's like something like you might ask, 4 or 5-year-old, why is that? Oh, it's just there. And he wants us to take him seriously. And he wants to poke fun at us for our faith in Jesus Christ, our faith in God, our faith that there's a creator, that there's something greater than ourselves. And yet he says, well, it's just there. The psalmist said, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. That's how he described it. It's interesting. Remember the born loser, Brutus Thornapple? He was lounging on a beach with 2 other fellows. And one of them said, I'm able to afford this because my house had a major fire and I got money for this. The other guy said, he said, I had a flood at my house, and he says, it just flooded everything. It was a total loss. And Brutus kind of mumbles to himself, leaning over at the other guy, and says, so how does one start a flat? Well, fires and floods are easy. Start if you have the matches and the water. It's like I said last week when the 2 atheists said we can create God, and he said go ahead, and he reached down to get the dirt, and God said get your own dirt. Fires and floods are easy if you've got what it takes to start. How does a universe which itself developed from nothing, as they would say, place into every human strand of DNA enough specific information to cover 600,000 pages of information from nothing? Really? Faith in Jesus is not something we grasp. He's not something that we reach out only when we're in time of trouble. Yes, we definitely do reach out for him in time of trouble, but he's not, That's not the only time we think about him and extol him and are devoted to him. This is why Jesus challenged the notice that more evidence would generate more faith. Really? To give truth to him who does not love the truth is to only give more reasons for misinterpretation. Never a statement was more true. Jesus' answer is the ultimate test of his claim. Destroy the temple. In 3 days, I'll raise it up. What greater proof could he offer than the resurrection from the dead? Agreed? People can claim, I cured your cataracts, or I cured your liver, or your pancreas is now working good. But go out to the graveyard, someone dead. So, naturalism is compelled. Naturalism, people who are naturalists, are compelled to believe that death is the cessation of life, irreversible ceasing of one's brain activities, something that for centuries of discussion they've been unable to make it go away. Death is philosophy's only problem. Well, it's not the only problem, it's just one of them. And yet, Jesus gave the greatest proof in all of history, listen closely, by accurately predicting his death and the time of his bodily resurrection. Of all the people, the temple authorities who are there thumbing their nose down at Jesus should have been aware. They should have been able to pick up Isaiah's scroll and read it in a flash. Isaiah said, yet it's the Lord's will to crush him and to cause him to suffer. Though the Lord makes his life an offering for sin, he will see his offspring and prolong his days. And the will of the Lord will prosper in his hand. After he suffered, he will see the light of life and be satisfied. And they claimed to be the keepers of the truth. They were all about controlling truth and the narrative in the temple area, but they didn't know Scripture. It's important to notice that Jesus didn't merely predict a spiritual resurrection. Boy, that would have been easy for the world. He predicted a bodily resurrection which was verifiable. Acts chapter 1, after his resurrection, he's meeting and he's eating with people for 40 days. They can touch him, they can talk with him, they can eat with him. First John chapter 1, as John begins, it says, we lived with him, we touched him, we did all these things, we ate together with him. And so, temple authorities, all they needed to do was produce his body. But they couldn't. You can't produce the body of someone who's not dead. Some of us were here Friday to celebrate the life of Sylvia. And it was easy if you knew Sylvia, although I need to paraphrase Rusty's remark better than that. We're glad Sylvia has gone home to be with the Lord, but we miss her terribly. Now, the problem is not Sylvia's, the problem is ours. I'm not making light of that at all, but if you knew her, you knew she wasn't worried about any of these things. Why? Because a long, long time ago, she understood this verse. We were buried, therefore, by baptism into death, in order that just as Christ was raised from the dead by the glory of the Father, we too may walk in newness of life. For if we died with Christ, we believe we shall also live with him. That's why it's easy to go to the funeral of a loved one, even if it's just ripping your guts out inside, because they have a relationship with Jesus. Regardless of how lonely and how empty we may feel, they are where they lived all their life to be. As we began the study, I said Jesus had a very specific reason for choosing the temple. Jesus' words had two messages. Number one, he says those who heard him speaking the words did not know he was speaking about the body, which he called the temple of God. In calling attention to this, he lifts man's eyes out of the world. That was his purpose. He wanted to lift us out of this world to a spiritual existence, something he wants us to see still to this day. We're in the flesh. We're tinted in this thing for a while. We're in a physical world, and that world is always pushing in on us. Jesus, all of his discipling ministry with those that were part of his ministry, he was always trying to move them above the world. Your body is his temple. They got more excited about that when the Spirit of God came down in the tabernacle. If you're a child of God, the Holy Spirit is living in you. In the Old Testament, he dwelled in a tent. David moved it when they built the temple in Jerusalem. That's never where he wanted to be. He wanted to come and live in us. Listen closely. And that's not even the final desire of Christ. The final desire of Christ is to be home with him. We're the bride of Christ. In all pantheistic religions, wow, I need to move. In all pantheistic religions, in the New Age thinking, the body is seen as an extension or a continuation of the universe. Stay with me here. A pantheist believes that God and the universe are the same. I'm going to take the time to make their argument. I'm just telling you what they believe. Deepak Chopra is an Indian-American author, a New Age guru. Remember, he's from the East, and he comes to the West, and everybody goes gaga about this guy. Stay with me. Chopra is a classic example of a pantheist. His main themes are spirituality, wealth, and success. Any TV evangelist could pick that up. His worldview is pantheistic, and he prides himself in a blending together of naturalism and the spiritual. Chopra argues that the randomness of the universe and its subatomic world, all those little bitty things, provide the basis for life. The randomness, just happened, just flip a coin. It's from this randomness that we find our being, our common values, our spiritual goals. He explains this in his book. Now, Chopra said on a material level, you and a tree are the same thing. You didn't know that, did you? Next time you go and hug a tree, you'll understand. Well, no wonder you hug the tree. You're just like a tree. He said you're made up of recycled elements, most carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and trace elements of other things. But at a quantum mechanical level, again, down to little itty-bitty stuff, there's no well-defined edges. Like a wiggle, a wave, a fluctuation, a convolution, a whirlpool, localized disturbance in the larger universe, he would say. Bottom line, the universe is an extension of your body. Remember Avatar? Oops. Remember all these people that were half animal, half man flying around on something that was weird looking? You know, they had some of the strangest looking things. And the bottom line, though, is they gathered what? They gathered under Mother Tree. Mother Tree was all about it. And these people were trying to excavate and take stuff out. You're disturbing Mother Tree. Avatar was promoting the same thing. I realized I didn't see it that way, and I don't. It's goofy and stupid, so I can watch the movie and not. But that was their point. You're one with the universe. Chopra's blend of naturalism and the spiritual violates the principles of science and religion and of that movie as well. Not possible. He reduces who we are to nothing but matter. So he says, here you are, you're a bunch of matter, and then he wants to make us something significant spiritually from that. Really? Now God took, and he made us into, from dirt, he made us into something. But that's not what Chopra has in mind. Chopra's world of human worth and Jesus' value of the human worth is galaxies apart. In Shakespeare, The Merchants of Venice, he provides a truth that we can illustrate here. It's basically the story of Shylock, who's this rich man who's arrogant and looks down on others. And he loans money to a friend named Antonio. Actually, he loans it to Antonio, who loans it to a friend. And he says, if you don't pay this back to me, I get a pound of flesh. Well, you know the movie, right? His ships were lost at sea. And so he couldn't pay it back. And the judge found out about it, and not to be outdone, declared, you can have your pound of flesh, but even if one drop of blood is spilled in the process, you'll have to pay with your own blood. Ooh, that took all the fun out of Shylock. It's no more possible to take a pound of flesh without shedding blood than it is possible to say that the body can't be altered, but at the same time reduce it to sheer matter. Naturalists cannot have their pound of flesh without bleeding it to death. Religions that make some attempt to keep the body set apart somehow, and in that process denying the Creator, they're fake, they're false. They're in the same boat with those who deny God, while claiming to protect life, while in the same breath saying, the body's just a bunch of matter. Just there it is. Moving away from God, our society has left us with nothing but a culture of lies. You ever notice how many lies you hear as people in our government stand up and speak? I mean, it's just like, how do you know they're lying? Someone said, well, they open their mouth. And it's accepted as though that's okay, as though that's somehow the normal. I don't know about you, but anybody else grew up understanding that lying was wrong? Naturalists will not even discuss these points, and I'm going to truck on. The place and the sacredness of the body, the right of every individual life, including the unborn child, the pleasure and consummation of sexual delights in the sanctity of marriage, the arguments against suicide, the care and protection of one's health, the arguments against murder, the command to love one another, and on and on. And they don't even talk about it. No, we don't want to talk about it. We're above all that stuff. That's faith stuff. That's stuff you crazy people that need Jesus hang on to. You know, it's your opiate. Go ahead. If someone isn't willing to discuss that, they have no right to speak out. All right. As a society, having lost the high value of God, we're just in a free fall today. Greed, cruelty, lust, right? Look around. Why do things happen? You look back, things are beginning to come out about back in the pandemic. How we were lied to again and again and again and again. If you get the vaccine, you won't get the virus. Really? And then after the thing all came out, and we're like, you guys lied to us, they go, well, you need a 5th shot by now. Bend over, here you go. Really? March 1998, long backstory, but it suits what I want to present. 2 boys went on a rampage, killing 4 girls and a teacher in Arkansas. It was a tragedy. There was a woman in the corner of where they'd all gathered for counseling. Her daughter had been one of those that's killed, and she was just there to talk to people and to get her daughter. And so, no husband, no friends, no family. And when they asked her, so why are you here? She said, I just came to get my little girl's body back. She didn't come to get a fluctuation or a wiggle or a wave or a squiggle. She came to get her daughter's body back. She came, Jesus made it clear that the body is not just different in information and ingredients. It's different not only in purpose, but he made it that way on purpose. That's why the resurrection of Jesus was a physical one that destroys anyone who tries to take away from his divinity and who he is, God in the flesh. The body matters in the eternal state, not just in the mortal one. We're told we get a body upon the resurrection. I don't care what model it is. I don't care what flavor it is. I'll take it. I just have about worn this one out. If I say, ha, you understand I'm nearly deaf. That's why I talk so loud. Jesus pays us this compliment that if you think about it, it's ginormous. If our body is his dwelling place, then worship rises from our bodies, right? Worship rises from you. Why does it rise from you? Because who's living in you? The Spirit is living in you, right? No other religious world makes this connection between the body and the temple. None of them. None of them. I don't care what you go, Hindu, Indian, Islam, it doesn't matter. None of them make this connection. That's what makes Jesus so unique. In fact, every other worldview of the body is separate from the temple. they can't make the trip because they have nothing to make the trip with. Rules are laid out. By the way, if you're part of that group, rules are laid out, a list of prerequisites. You got to do this, and you got to do that, and you got to wash this and wash that, and you got to put this on and put that on. I watched a Talbotson festival. You got to get on and look at it. It's just weird. You have all these people in India. You have the hundreds of thousands crowded together like sardines in a can. You have them with stuff stuck through their jaws, stuck through their tongues and their lips. You have them with fish hooks in their back. There's somebody in the back pulling back, pull back, pull back. And they do this for hours on hours on hours. And what do they do it for? Well, they finally go up the steps of to this temple of Murugan and the second son of the Hindu Skiva. Why do they do that? Well, to win a blessing from the one he worships. Really? And that's the God you want? The one that had you put fish hooks in your back and pulled on it until you ripped your flesh out? How do we get to such places in the world today? If you're old enough, or you had a really good history teacher, you'll remember the assassination of this lady. I bet you forgot why she was assassinated, because I didn't remember either until I read it. But she was assassinated because a bunch of Sikhs put weapons in a mosque, whatever they call it, temple, whatever it was in. So she ordered her troops into the temple. They got mad and assassinated her. Now Jesus, she was murdered to preserve a temple. Jesus would have told them that actually you destroyed what he intended to be his temple in order to preserve a place. It's like this building. People say, when a funeral comes, can we do this? Why? Why not? It's just mortar and carpet, sheetrock and wood. And we're gone. You know who's in here? Nobody. And he was waiting for that. Nobody. Until we're here, this is only a place set aside to worship. Until we get here, nothing happens. Jesus sent a message loud and clear. We're his temple. We do not turn in a certain direction to pray. We're not bound by having to go to a building. There are no posters and times and limitations that restrict our access to God. The Christian becomes the temple with him or her. Jesus pays the human body, I think, the highest compliment by making it his dwelling place. We're going to come and live in you. You're not a Christian. Really? You want God to live in you? That's what he wants to do. Wasn't this the message of the woman who poured out the alabaster ointment on Jesus? Remember, one of the disciples at least was going, man, that's a waste. That's a waste. You pour out that could have been sold and given to the poor. Wasn't that their argument? You can shake your head. It was the argument. I'm not tricking you. On the one hand, it was to prepare for his death. On the other hand, something greater had just taken place. So I know you probably thought you're never going to make a point. Maybe you still haven't thought I made a point. But the temple is a big deal to Jesus. The temple there was a big deal when he was there. The temple is a big deal to him today. So a woman who possibly earned a living through prostitution, in her soiled earthly temple, she came and gave him an offering in what would become later a dwelling place. That is, it would be if she decided to give up that life. Jesus said of her that wherever the gospel story would be told, the story of this woman, what she's done for him would also be told. You think he thought it was significant? It's just a waste. It was the ultimate exchange between her corruption and his purity. By the way, if that was the ultimate exchange between her corruption and purity, every time someone gives up their life of sin, they're making the same thing. The corruption goes away and the purity of their life begins. It represented the challenged relationship between the dwelling and the one who lives in the dwelling. Christ in you, the hope of glory. Woo-hoo! Had to do that because nobody else was going to do it. What price could you place on the news that God seeks to live within you? What price would you put on it? You think about it often? You get up and think, Lord, thank you for the day, and I don't understand a clue. I am absolutely clueless how, but I know how my own spirit lives in me. But thank you for living in me, and I'll do my best to keep myself apart from the world. So you really have a temple to dwell in that you're worthy of. So we're finished. They asked, what sign do you give us? Destroy this body in 3 days, I'll raise it up. 3 days. Jesus has been doing this ever since time began with Cain killing Abel. There's been this concern about death, and all through life it's been this concern. And finally, when he goes and dies, and he comes back from the tomb, death is no longer our worst enemy. So Jesus says, if your body dies, don't worry. You're in me, you're going to get something far better. I don't want you to raise your hands, but if I ask you to raise your hand, how many of you would like a different body? Would you like a newer one, a new model? Would you like something, piece missing here, piece missing there, a little less here, a little less there? Jesus said, when you die, it's not the end of things. Sylvia at the funeral, that wasn't the end of things. That was just the beginning for her. That's what she lived all her life for, and she died, and she came in a cute little urn. But the Sylvia that meant anything to us, and that meant enough for God that he came and died for, was long ago gone. The people have said, do they feel anything during cremation? Isn't that good news? All right. I don't know if you're a Christian today. I don't know if we've said anything to make you, maybe I just confused you more, but I want you to know this. Jesus came to save your life from sin. If you don't understand how you can connect to that, talk to us. It's important. There's not saved and lost in another column. They're saved and lost.